It is week 7. Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. We're giving you our running back and wide receiver tiers this week. We're going through 70 players today. This is a whole new take on what we do on Thursdays. Instead of looking at a couple of players that you could start, a couple of players to sit, we are giving you guys our entire rankings, our tiers. So we're going to start with the running backs here, Dave. And we really don't have any time to spare, so let's just jump right into it, okay? Tier 1, we got Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Quinshawn Judkins, Josh Jacobs, Jameer Gibbs, and Devon Achane. These are our tier 1 running backs. And like we were talking about before the show, I don't think there's anyone saying, I'm thinking about benching these guys. But there
Right.
is a guy here that we want to pinpoint, Quinshawn Judkins, who normally isn't in this tier 1, but he is a good starter. He's going up against Miami this week.
And really, it's just as simple as that. I kind of like jokingly tweeted
End of
that
analysis.
yeah, I was watching Kamani Vidal film the other day, and I was like, my major takeaway here is that Miami run defense is really, really bad. And that's why I said, like, you can't really draw any conclusions from Kamani Vidal's game last week because he was just running through these wide open holes. And Quinshon Judkins, I know, like coming off of a down week, and I think a lot of people are worried. Is this a fluke? Like, is he not the real thing? No, Quinshon Judkins is a good running back. He has a great matchup this week. I think you and I both have him inside our top 5, or close to it, like top 6. Yeah, I mean, he's just a surefire starter this week.
Yeah, I have Quinshawn Judkins as my RB6 this week, and I believe you have him as your RB3.
Yeah,
So
which, like,
either
if
way,
you're
he's
if
starting.
you're in a world where you've got Jonathan Taylor, Quinshon Judkins, Christian McCaffrey, and Bijan Robinson, like, yeah, I guess I'm mentioning Bijan Robinson this week, but I don't know too many people that are in that position.
It's a rare universe where the Browns are favored in a game.
Right.
Miami's given up 330 combined rushing yards over the last 2 weeks. So fire up your Quinshawn Judkins. Dave, let's jump down to the next tier. I think we can kind of breeze past that first one there. But in the next tier, we're starting at running back 8. It's Javonte Williams, then Saquon Barkley. Never thought we'd be saying that at the preseason.
Right.
Kyron Williams, Brees Hall, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Ashton Jinty, Rashad White, Cam Scadaboo, Rico Dowdle. That is running backs 8 through 16. Let's start with Javonte Williams, Dave, going up against Washington Commanders, who they just gave up a big game to DeAndre Swift.
Mhm.
Javonte's my running back 8 this week. But prior to this game, Washington had actually been pretty good against running backs. They'd only allowed one running back to score 15 plus fantasy points, and that running back was Bijan Robinson. So I'm a little bit lower than consensus on Javonte, but he's still a must start player.
Yeah, and I've got him at my wide receiver, or I'm sorry, my running back 8, and it's just, the matchup isn't great, but it's also not bad enough that I'm going to like react too dramatically to it. We've talked about Javante a lot this season, but 25 years old, career best efficiency metrics like breaking tackles, generating yards after contact. He's got the full workload on a good offense. So yeah, I'm just not overthinking this one. I mean, like when I'm looking at these guys, they are mostly plug and play starters, but this is also a really interesting tier because like as we kind of talked about it briefly pre-show, I was like, these guys are all plug and play starters. But then you look at it, half of this tier are players that were picked up off of waivers or that there were
Yeah.
like no expectations for or super late round picks. So there's a lot of people that might have like 2 of the guys in tier 1 and then another 2 or 3 guys here in tier 2. These are not names that we expected to be talking about as must starts. And because of that, there's a lot of difficult decisions where you might be benching some top 15 running backs this week.
Yeah, I'll say like one of the guys who I think people might be frustrated with is Saquon Barkley, but I don't think there's ever a point where you're going to be benching him, even against a tough Minnesota defense. Kyron Williams, just a very stable running back. He's got a line right now, 66 and a half rushing yards. Think he probably beats that going up against Jacksonville. It is the London game. Puka's out. You'll probably see this team lean a little bit more on Kyron Williams here. Actually, only one game below 65 rushing yards for Kyron Williams this year. So if you're a prop better, go out and bet that one right away. Uh, Dave, Brees Hall going up against Carolina. This is a player that I think
Smash matchup.
a lot of people have questions about, right? It is it is a, let's call it a smash matchup. In the past, I do think Carolina's been tougher this year against running backs. Just recently, they shut down Javonte Williams. They held Bijan Robinson to just 16 fantasy points. I do think there's a little bit of the reputation of Carolina being a run funnel year after year after year. And now all of a sudden, they've actually been pretty good against running backs. They're allowing the second fewest rush yards since week 2 after the big ETN blow up week. I think the big thing here, the saving grace for Brees Hall, is going to be what volume can you get with Garrett Wilson out?
Yeah, and I do wonder. I'm trying to remember. There was a team last year that like Their fantasy points against didn't look great because there were so many lopsided matchups, and we've kind of seen a lot of that. I mean, like Bijan, like they were getting beaten down so badly that like Bijan didn't even get touches in the second half. Like the
Right.
Falcons shut them out 30-0, and they just kind of iced Bijan. Last week was a weird game where I don't think a lot of people expected a close matchup between Dallas and Carolina. Still, there's just not a lot in this defense that worries me all that much. We've seen Brees Hall is getting one of the highest opportunity shares in the league. Talked about him on yesterday's Buy Low show, 11th in the league in opportunities. He's still getting the touches. I don't think that they have a lot of guys in this front that are going to slow Brees Hall down. So this to me, I know we're coming off of a down week where he didn't get in the end zone, had some of his worst efficiency in the year. Now playing at home against Carolina, this just feels like a pretty obvious get right spot for Brees.
You have Brees Hall as your running back 11, if I'm not mistaken here,
Right. Yep.
and I've got him as my running back 13. So he's just outside the top 12 for me. Next on here, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt going up against the Dallas Cowboys. This is another team that has become a run funnel and
Mhm.
expecting a shootout with this Washington Dallas game. Like we mentioned in the previous show, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has sort of become the workhorse for Washington despite the fumbles, which is great. I know there's minimal receiving work here, but Dallas run defense, not great. I'm going to ride the workload, ride the matchup, start Bill in your lineups this week.
And this is another one where, like, coming off of a down game by his standards, there might be some worry here, but this is one where I think the numbers do tell the whole story. Like, the Dallas Cowboys are third in the league in running back points allowed. Um, you know, 28 points per game running backs have been averaging against Dallas. We know Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is good. We know that Jeremy McNichols is going to get his like 3 to 5 touches. Chris Rodriguez is going to watch from the bench, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt should be able to run free against this Dallas defense.
Dave, the next three running backs that we have here, Ashton Jinty, Rashad White, Cam Scatterbo, and each of these players have tough matchups. Kansas City, Detroit, and Denver. However, I don't think for any of these three guys you could say I need to bench them because the usage is there. They all have touchdown upside. They're all getting passing game usage, and I think that's what you're hoping for here. The one I do get slightly worried about is Cam Scatterbo because of the implied point total for this game. This could be another 13-10 slog fest, but with Jackson Dart and the way the Giants are playing, you never quite know what's going to happen in this game. So they could do what they did against the Philadelphia Eagles, be able to pull away and control the clock with Cam Scatterbo, and the Broncos really don't have anything they can do about that.
Yeah, and 2-0 at home, 0-1 on the road. So now going on the road, you want to temper expectations a little bit, also against a really
Sure.
tough run defense. So I'm with you. Like there's reasonable concern with Cam Scadaboo this week, but based on what we've seen, like I just don't want to bet against the guy. Like he is the kind of lifeblood of this Giants offense right now. Like he is going to get a ton of work. We're not going to see a lot of Tyrone Tracy or Devin Singletary, and the touchdown upside just makes him worth it. So this might be one of his lower scoring games, but I think that the volume alone, like even if he doesn't get in the end zone, he's going to get a bunch of touches. He's going to get a handful of targets. It just feels like he's one of those guys that has like an 8 to 10 point floor. And then we saw the upside last week, and I think that's why you keep putting him in your lineup. Rashad White is the other one that I want to talk about real quickly, though.
Yeah.
Um, so much was made about his inefficiencies 2 years ago, and that's something that we talked about. In 2023, it's like the workload was there, but he wasn't really great with the workload. Like the production was there, the workload was there, but we were looking at the EPA and the yards after contact per attempt and all these sorts of things. And I'm willing to just like not care about that. RB7 2 weeks ago, RB10 last week, which is very in line with what he did as the starter a couple of years ago. And I talked with Matt Waldman about this a couple of days ago and wrote about it in our roundtable, but it's kind of Kyron Williams-esque, where like he is such a versatile back that that's where his value lies. Like he might
They've
not be
always
the
been. Like he and
exactly,
Kyron always feel very interchangeable. Like
exactly,
they
yeah,
don't have high draft capital. They're not super explosive. They made their way as pass catchers, but then they became more of runners.
right.
Like it's been a very interesting road for each of these guys.
And that's it. I think if you look at like pass blocking, running, pass catching, like you stack up all of these things, I don't think that you can say Rashad White is elite in any one thing, but he's like slightly above average in everything. And that allows them to just keep him on the field, throw different looks at defenses. So I'm not going to nitpick anything about Rashad White's efficiency anymore. I don't care. Like if Bucky Irving is out, he is a plug and play guy.
The last running back in this tier is Rico Dowdle, who there's going to be a lot of talk this week. Can we trust him now that Chuba Hubbard is back? The coaches have been somewhat non-committal, but then say, he's earned a bigger role, and like we'll see, and all. It's very ambiguous coming out of Carolina. I think you and I are in full agreement here, though. Like the genie's out of the bottle. You can't put Rico Dowdle back on the bench, and I don't think that he goes back to just a supplementary role behind Chuba Hubbard here. I think he ends up being the lead back in this offense, and I've got him as a running back 16. I believe you've got him at running back 13 right now in your rankings. I think you have to start him. You have to start him. If it's not the same, obviously temper expectations. He's not going for 200 yards, at least we don't think. But I think that with what we've seen over these last two games, and even with this matchup, I know the Jets matchup is a little bit tougher. It's still a very beatable team. Javonte Williams just gashed them for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns just
Hmm.
2 weeks ago in week 5. So that is still something that is very reasonable for Rico Dowdle to do. I think you're starting him as a running back too, no matter what this week.
Yeah, I'm totally ready to look like an idiot after this week, but like I am just completely ranking this as if Rico Dowdle has run away with the job. Like I've got Chuba Hubbard
Right.
outside of starting territory this week.
Same.
And we don't have to spend too much time on Rico Dowdle, but I think he is one of the more like interesting players this week. I watched all the touches from last week. Took a lot of time. He had a lot of touches last week, but like this wasn't like the Miami game and what we talked about with Kamani Vidal and what we talked about Rico Dowdle 2 weeks ago. He was making plays himself. Like this Dallas defense, I think is a little bit better than maybe their numbers say, but like there were a handful of plays like where it was getting blown up in the backfield, and he had the quickness to cut back and still make something out of nothing. He was breaking tackles. He was generating yards after the contact. He's a very patient runner who knows how to press his blockers and use that leverage. And the one last thing I want to say, this isn't just a 2 week fluke. And I think that's what everybody is just like, oh, he's only done it over the last 2 weeks. If you look back to the midway point of last season when he took that starting job in Dallas, you look at those last 7 games of the season plus his 2 starts now. So we're looking at a 9 game sample here. It's not a tiny, tiny little sample size. His 17 game pace over his last 9 starts, 2,013 rushing yards, 304 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. Like this
That's
is
good
not
math.
just a 2 week thing. Like he's pacing to basically be a 2,500 scrimmage
Right.
yard player over his last 9 starts. Rico Dowdle, I am coming away more and more impressed every time I watch him.
Right. Yeah. It's not like it's a rookie that we haven't seen before. It's not a
Right.
guy who's been a bench warmer for all of his career. He was a starter last year in Dallas, rushed for over 1,000 yards. It was actually surprising when he signed in Carolina because I
Mhm.
thought he'd probably stay in Dallas and keep the starting running back job. So yeah, I mean, he's we can't keep thinking of him as like this kind of 2 game wonder. I think
Right.
he's here to stay.
Agree.
Let's hop down to the next tier here. This is going to be running backs 17 through 26. So pretty much guys that are going to be either starting for you or on the cusp of starting, most likely in the flex spot for you. But Jalen Warren, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne, Jordan Mason, Alvin Kamara, Chase Brown, David Montgomery, Kamani Vidal, and Ken Walker III. Dave, let's start with Jalen Warren here because we had a week away with injury. Then we had him come back, and it wasn't the usage that we wanted to see typically. But he's going up against Cincy this week, who's allowing the most fantasy points to running backs. Touchdown odds are pretty high for him. I know that Kenneth Gainwell is coming in there, and Caleb Johnson kind of kept his role, but he wasn't very good with it. I'd say like there's reason to be slightly worried with Jalen Warren, but I also think that if you just need someone to get you 12 points and potentially fall in the end zone, Jalen Warren's a good bet for you this week.
I think that's it. Yeah. And he didn't look 100% healthy. And Kenneth Gainwell is going to be a little bit more involved than he was earlier in the season, but I think he's still the clear RB1 here. These Thursday night games are always fluky. These AFC North games are always fluky. Like this could
It's usually like a
easily
9-6 field goal fest. It's horrible.
that's what I was gonna say. And we're gonna watch the game tonight because we're sickos and that's what we do. But
The
like
kids are
I
going to
have
go nuts if
such
it's 6-7.
oh gosh, please don't even. But like I have very, very low expectations for this game. But Jalen Warren and then Chase Brown on the opposite side of the ball, like you're not especially excited about either, but the opportunity is gonna be there. Did you see what somebody called this game? I don't know if you saw Aaron Rodgers'
Oh
reaction to
boy.
it. They're calling it the icy hot bowl because you got Joe Flacco and Aaron Rodgers going against each other. Pretty good.
Fantastic.
I got a good laugh out of that one.
It's you know what? The Copper Fit Bowl, the little,
Yeah.
the commercials like Brett Favre and Jerry Rice running
I,
around.
I can handle like those where it's like, oh, knee braces and whatnot. The one that really threw me for a loop was the Emmett Smith Depends commercial. I was like, no, no,
Yeah,
no. Like, no, I feel way too old now. We got
that's
my childhood favorites pooping their pants.
we don't I mean, we don't think he's actually doing that, right? Like
I don't think
we're gonna
so,
give him
but
the
just
benefit of the doubt.
yeah,
He's
I
just
like to
selling out for a
think
little bit of money.
yeah, yeah, but depends. That's a step too far. Like arthritis, whatnot. We don't need to sell depends yet.
Everybody poops, Dave. There's a book about it. Next on here, DeAndre Swift going up against New Orleans. He got really hot against Washington. I think that's more so what it is than Washington being bad or the Bears finally figuring it out. You could tell me differently, Dave. I do just think it's a player that got hot, and there was a lot of concern with the Chicago passing game that Washington was really focusing on. There were just plays left on the table here and there, especially with Roma Dunze. I do expect this to be a bounce back game for him. Saints run D is a little bit tougher than we think. They've only allowed one touchdown to running backs over the last 3 weeks. And the big games they've allowed have been like just flat out blow up games. Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, Ken Walker getting 2 touchdowns. So I think you're just kind of looking at a return to normalcy for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, and I mean, like right now, we're looking at good production from DeAndre Swift. If you look at his
Yeah.
per game average, like he's the RB 13 in fantasy right now. And I remember talking a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about DeAndre Swift, and I said it felt like he wasn't really living up to his potential. Like at the time, he was RB 16 in expected fantasy points, and he was outside of the top 20 in actual fantasy points. So the opportunity has been there all year. And we know with DeAndre Swift, you're not going to look at a guy who's just going to like 5 yards every time he touches the ball. You're hoping for the explosives and the touchdowns. And when those hit, that's when you see those big boom games. So unfortunately, you are going to have the down weeks from DeAndre Swift. And we've seen a handful of those 8 points in week one, 9.3 points in week two. But because he's got the big play upside, he can always have those 25-point weeks like he did last week. So I think you keep putting him in your lineup as kind of a middling RB2, knowing that you're going to have some weeks that aren't going to feel great. And then you're going to have these huge boom weeks like last week.
Next on here is J.K. Dobbins going up against the New York Giants, who at the beginning of the season, the Giants were an easy run funnel defense. And it
Mhm.
does seem that whatever has happened to their offense has carried over to the defense and everything's playing better. Abdul Carter has actually been a real
Yes.
spark plug for this defense, and it's been big in the run defense game. Brian Burns looks rejuvenated, actually getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Now, not that he's ever been bad at that, but it's just the defense does look different here.
And both of those guys also have Dexter Lawrence now playing the best football of his career.
Right.
Like whole front, like that is just going to be a nightmare for years to come.
Yeah, and it's like that's where when I look at J.K. Dobbins here, I see this as a sort of safe, boring vanilla play where you're just saying, hopefully he gets a touchdown here. We know he's getting the volume, right? And this is probably, like we said, it's likely not going to be a shootout. It's got the lowest point total of the week set by Vegas. So I don't expect this to be a shootout. If you're saying, okay, I'm projected to lose my matchup by X amount of points, maybe you want to go with someone that's got a little bit of a higher upside than a J.K. Dobbins. He's still a safe start, but he's not the sexiest of starts.
Yeah, I keep waiting for that RJ Harvey takeover, but they like J.K. Dobbins, but it just feels like a ticking time bomb. I mean, like he looked really good early in the season and then has kind of cooled off, which is very similar to what we saw last year. I mean, that's kind
Very
of been
J.K.
the
Dobbins.
very J.K. Dobbins. Yeah, healthy to start the year, looks awesome, and then just picks up these minor little aches and pains as the season progresses. So yeah, I mean, I'm starting him, but definitely don't feel great about it. Like of all of the players in this tier, you got to rank him in here because the volume's been there,
Right.
and it's J.K. Dobbins. But I'm with you. Like this does feel like probably one of the riskiest players in this tier.
Yeah, and it kind of gets ugly at the end of this tier where you're almost feeling like, got to start these guys either because of what
Mhm.
they've done in the past. Just like looking through here, Dave, Travis Etienne going up against the Rams. Rams have one of the absolute best run
Yep.
defenses in the league, haven't allowed a running back rushing touchdown this season. That one worries me. 3 straight games below 60 yards for Travis Etienne, and he's not really getting the target volume either. Jordan Mason, it's been kind of meh, going up against Philly, who now they're so it's funny when they are missing Jalen Carter, run defense not so great. Jalen Carter gets back in, run defense fixed. So
Who'd have
should
thunk
be
it?
back. Yeah, who'd have thunk, right? The superstar player. Should be better this week, the Philly defense. So that does worry me a little bit here with Jordan Mason. Alvin Kamara, I think, is the guy that's interesting. We talked about him a bit yesterday. Um, there's been worry, right? We're seeing more Kendre Miller on the field, but now we also got Taysom Hill, who got himself a touchdown when they got into the red zone.
That stat line, most Taysom Hill stat line I've ever seen. 1 carry, 1 yard,
One
one
carry, one
touchdown. I
yard.
was like back in peak form. We got him.
Yeah, the kids don't know nothing about Taysom Hill, man. Nothing. This is how do you feel about this Alvin Kamara this week? Because I know You've said he's a trade candidate that you'd like to go buy. How do you feel starting him this week?
The Chicago offense has been good, and I don't think I'm saying anything that's coming from like a place of Bears homerism. They're the only team that scored 24 points in every game so far this year. Like it's been a good offense. So when I see
Okay,
them,
go off, King.
yeah, yeah,
There you
they've
go.
been better than expected. So I see this, potentially pushing them to a game script where they might have to throw a little bit. We know that the Saints offense isn't great. So I see this potentially being a nice game script for Alvin Kamara, where he is getting some usage late as a pass catcher, but also for as good as the Bears offense has been. And their pass defense is stepping up a little bit, but their run defense is still just abysmal. Like this is one where, teams can beat the Bears just by running it consistently right through the middle of them. And that's not Alvin Kamara's job. But like if they do give Alvin Kamara, just a dozen touches and 5 or 6 targets, that's enough to get him into a high end RB2 finish this week.
The next guy on here is David Montgomery, who, Dave, you have him ahead of Alvin Kamara. I have him below Alvin Kamara, but here he is in close to the bottom of our tier three. David Montgomery, only 6 opportunities last week, still efficient. Coaching staff is saying more opportunity is coming, right? Uh, I would say that if we're looking at this game, the implied point total 29, you're assuming he's probably due for a touchdown. Is that more or less what we're looking at here? It kind of feels like that's where we're trapped with David Montgomery, where we're looking at anywhere from 8 to 12 touches in a game and just hoping for a touchdown where you just kind of throw him in your flex every single week with limited upside.
Yeah, this is a tough one, and I do want to fact check myself. It was the Bears have scored 21 points or more in every game, not 24. Just for the commenters out there, but yeah, this one I do have a little bit of pause with David Montgomery, and like you've got to rank him somewhere because it's David Montgomery, and this game has a really high projected point total. But also, when I look at this Tampa Bay defense, like they are most susceptible when you can get running backs out to the edges, and that's not really David
That's, yeah.
Montgomery's game. Like you don't want to be slamming David Montgomery into Vita Vea 28 times. So we've seen there have been a handful of games this year where like David Montgomery's just been completely out of the game plan and it's been the Jameer Gibbs show. And I think that's the risk here is like last year it was a 50-50 split pretty much all year. And we've seen a handful of 50-50 games this year, but we've also seen the 80-20 games that are just like completely foreign to us. So you got to put David Montgomery in your lineup, but this kind of feels like it could potentially be a trap game for him.
Another guy who I think people are going to have actually a couple of these players here. The two final players to finish out this tier, Kamani Vidal, who, yeah, got a bunch of volume against Miami. I do think this is a different scenario than the Rico Dowdle scenario. Kamani Vidal has been a career third stringer.
Mhm.
Going up against Miami last week, it was wide open for him. This is a very different opponent this week going up against Indy, who has not allowed a blow up game. And when I say a blow up game, I mean just a big fantasy performance for running backs. The most points they've given up was Devon Achan, 16 and a half points, PPR points, excuse me, in week one. And that was because of a big receiving role. Dave, I think if you Kamani Vidal here, if you're starting him, I don't think you're putting him in as an RB2. You're putting him in as a flex who's hopefully getting some receiving work in this game. That if Quentin Johnston is still out, you're thinking maybe the pie gets, divvied up a little bit differently amongst the players, but that's really about it for me.
Yeah, and I don't know how much Hassan Haskins we're going to see. Like, we kind of know who he is at this point, but
It would
yeah,
be the
this
most
is
Chargers thing ever to
it
give
would
Hassan
be.
Haskins like 18 touches and
No, the
Kamani
most
Vidal gets
Chargers thing
five.
ever would be Naheem Hines coming out here and having
Yes,
a revenge game against the Colts and going for 150 yards, and that's in play too. Kind of being a little tongue in
I
cheek
know you
here,
are. I
but
know.
this is one like, yeah, you've got to put Kamani Vidal in because of what we saw last week, and maybe I'm going to be wrong. Maybe this is just like a good offense, and Kamani Vidal that's all that matters. And even missing Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, like they still have a very good interior offensive line, and that's why we saw these huge holes. But the Colts defense is just much better. So this is one like I'm okay having a little bit of pause here. Like some of the other guys that we have ranked in that range, like technically I do have Kamani Vidal ahead of Travion Henderson and Kenneth Walker and Ramondre Stevenson and Isaiah
Right.
Pacheco. And but if you want to put those guys in ahead of Kamani Vidal, I wouldn't blame anybody for doing it because I think a wait and see approach is probably the best thing to do here.
Yeah. Ken Walker, final. You mentioned his name. He's the final running back in this tier for us. 2 straight games with 10 carries and a one
Ugh.
target. Zach Charbonnet has just taken so much volume from him. It's a tough matchup with Houston. If I'm being honest, I almost want to just move Ken Walker down to the next tier, and that's why
Yeah.
I've got him ranked a bit lower here. I just don't know that I trust him or Zach Charbonnet. I don't really want to start them. I kind of want to sit and wait and see which one ends up getting the workload. I think we got to expect that we're hoping for a trade here. I don't want to say we're ever hoping for an injury, but I think you're hoping to see that there is someone who sort of takes over this role, and I just don't think that's happening with this coaching staff.
And I think the frustrating thing is that like we as fantasy managers hate what's happening with this backfield, but it's working in real life football and the Seattle Seahawks are winning games. And I think that there's like a good
Not
symbiotic
that great.
relationship here.
Like the rushing game is not great for them, but they're winning games, right? It's like you can kind of ignore it because you're winning.
Yeah, and it's just like they're such different players. Like this is a very much so like you always talk about those thunder lightning backfields, and that's exactly what this is. Like Zach Charbonnet is the guy. Like if you need him to get 2 yards, he's going to get you 3 yards, and if you need him to get 5 yards, he's going to get you 3 yards. And like
Right.
Kenneth Walker is the guy who's going to take the losses, but then he's got the big play upside that Charbonnet doesn't. So they kind of benefit each other. Like Charbonnet wears the defenses down. Kenneth Walker helps them, sit with these lighter fronts that Zach Charbonnet could beat up on. Incredibly frustrating for fantasy. You're just starting both of these guys as flex options, hoping Charbonnet can rip off an 80-yarder, or hoping Walker can rip off an 80-yarder, or Charbonnet can score a couple of touchdowns. But when they don't do that, then you're like, what was I thinking putting a guy in a timeshare in my lineup? But you just kind of have to keep doing it, unfortunately.
Let's go to the next tier on here. And this is tier number 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it
hmm
is. And we're looking at number running backs 27 through 32. Trevion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson. Might as well just make that one running back. Isaiah Pacheco, Tony Pollard, Zach Charbonnet, and Bam Knight. So, Dave, with Trevion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson,
I mean, it's
you're
the,
not,
the East Coast Seahawks, right? Like it's the
yeah,
same thing we just said. Yeah.
you're not excited to start either of them. I think like the only shining light here is that they're going up against the Titans, who Titans run defense actually not bad, but game
Right.
script would dictate that the Patriots will likely lead. I think what my hope here is that we're going to see some Trevion Henderson usage, and potentially this could be one of those coming out parties for him because it's a defense that he can win against on the outside. However, I don't know, man. It's the Mike Vrabel revenge game. I feel like Mike Vrabel is just going to do Mike Vrabel things and be like, let's run Ramondre Stevenson 19 times up the middle in Jeffrey Simmons' face.
That could definitely happen. Did you see the quote from Mike Vrabel in a press conference 2 days ago,
What do
where
you
he
say?
said that he had to have a talk with the running backs coach because he was focusing too much on ball
Yeah, too much on
security?
not fumbling. Yes, I did see that. He's like, we're too worried about ball security. I'm like, my guy, you're not worried enough.
Yeah. Bill Belichick might be out of the NFL, but his spirit lives on, and I think Mike
Oh,
Vrabel is just like, I think he enjoys trolling fantasy managers, and I think that a lot of the usage and the
he's he's
comments
the
and
he's the
things of
Mad
that.
Men meme where it's John Hamm and he's like, I literally never think of you. He doesn't
I
care
don't
about
think
fantasy. I
about
don't
you
even
at
think
all. Yeah.
yeah, like he doesn't troll fantasy managers. He just doesn't think about us at all.
I don't know if it's like but like for him to come out like the thing where Ramondre Stevenson had that like huge deep wheel route catch a few weeks ago, and then like he gets on a podcast for no reason the next day, and he's like, that play was actually drawn up for Travion Henderson. Like it almost feels spiteful and intentional
Yeah.
at this point, but maybe that's just me, reading this from my perspective.
Running back 29 here, Isaiah Pacheco. He, I mean, got a season high in usage last week, I guess. That's cool. Sure. Not really getting the goal line work that we want to see, but um, there's a decent, so like this could be one of those runaway games where the Chiefs win by like 30 points. Like it is very, very possible going up against Las Vegas here. Not a good defense. We could see some great things from Isaiah Pacheco potentially. So he's one of those kind of desperation flexes. I'll say this, I do think the return of Rashee Rice opened things up on the offense. Like I know we want and we expect a volume for Rice, which I think will still happen, but it is the Raiders. And if the Chiefs end up ahead by 3 scores, I know these games usually get played pretty tough, but if the Chiefs end up ahead, they could just run the clock out.
And we're seeing like the Chiefs are back to like the explosive, awesome
Being
offense we
very
saw.
chiefy.
Yeah, I mean, like this is not the same dink and dunk Chiefs that we saw over the last couple of years. Like they've got a good arsenal now. Like with Rashi Rice back out there, Hollywood Brown has been playing well. They found out Tyquan Thornton, how to get him involved. Xavier Worthy, of course, doing his things. Travis Kelsey hasn't been great, but he definitely looks better than he did last year. And I think that all of those things happening, like Mahomes is playing arguably the best football of his career right now. And when you've got like 5 legitimate pass catching weapons out there getting passes thrown to them by the best quarterback in football, I don't see how you can afford to load the box. So I think that Pacheco here, like, it's just there's going to be volume and there's going to be soft fronts and there's going to be opportunities for scoring. So trending up in the usage, but we don't feel great about it. But this does feel like one where, like, I'm looking at him at RB 29 in my rankings right now, and that does feel like admittedly too low because it feels like his upside this week is 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I haven't felt like an Isaiah Pacheco game like that has been looming once this season. But it feels like now that the usage is trending up with a good divisional matchup with Rashi Rice back, I could see that huge boom game for Pacheco that we've been waiting on.
Oh, the Chiefs. They're just a fun team to pay attention to.
I just moved Pacheco up in my rankings.
Look
Not
at
huge,
that.
but I moved him up a few spots. I'm like, what am I doing putting Kamani Vidal ahead of Isaiah Pacheco? So Isaiah Pacheco now my running back 25 on the week as opposed to the 28 when we put this show sheet together.
Do you feel good about it?
I do, yeah. I might feel frisky
You
tonight and
shouldn't.
move him up to RB
You shouldn't.
24, and then that way I could officially say Isaiah Pacheco RB2 in my rankings.
No, you shouldn't feel good about it at all. Tony Pollard. I guess you got to rank him somewhere. Everything just seems to be going down for him. It's a brutal matchup going against the Patriots. I don't want to start him unless I have to. Zach Charbonnet, similar. It's a tough matchup going against Houston. Don't want to start him unless I have to. Bam Knight is the last guy in this tier. We're looking at a guy who's getting the goal line and early down work. Michael Carter getting the passing down work. But this is a game against the Packers where
Right.
there might not be a whole lot of goal line or early down work for him to take. So Packers have been notoriously beatable through the air with running backs. They do tend to play his own defense, something we've talked about week after week here, where Carter could end up being the guy, but I think we're just going to assume Bam Knight gets a little more volume and has the opportunity to fall into the end zone. Michael Carter is not far behind in my rankings, but I think this is more of I don't like either of them than I really like one of them more than the other.
Yeah, I mean the Packers, they are best in the league in rushing yards allowed to running backs. They've
Right.
allowed, and I mean, I guess you got to take that with a grain of salt because they did have a bye week, which some other teams haven't. But even on a per game basis, they're still inside the top 5. So I mean, this is just a buzzsaw of a defensive front. Looks like we're probably trending towards another Jacoby Brissett start. I still don't know if that's a positive or a negative for this offense as a whole. I
Nobody
guess
knows.
we'll find out after another Jacoby Brissett game. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there are better options than Bam Knight, and like I've got Tajay Spears ahead of Bam Knight in my rankings this week and don't feel great about that either. But like, it just feels like the upside for Bam Knight is so limited. Like, we're going to be seeing him splitting touches and getting early down work against a very good team that is the clear favorite in this matchup. Like, if I'm swinging for the fences with my flex spot, give me Tajay Spears who can like rip off a 50 or 60 yard play and like maybe do something special. I don't see a lot of special abilities from Bam Knight. I just see kind of a volume based guy
Right.
who's going to struggle in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think I'll be making that adjustment as well in my rankings as well because I've got Spears behind Knight. Honestly, I think I'm going to move Spears ahead of Zach Charbonnet and probably ahead of Tony Pollard, his running mate on his team. Like I'd rather go for the upside of Spears in a game where they are going to be trailing, which is every game, by the way,
Right.
Tennessee. So yeah, I'll take that. Speaking of Tajay Spears, he kicks off the final tier here. So this is tier number 5, running backs 33 through 38. These are the guys that are maybe your second flex, a second desperation flex if things are getting really bad on your team. But
I'm just
Tajay
laughing at how
Spears,
many like split backfields we just have in these last 2 tiers
it's
where it's just like
gross.
Woody Marks and Nick Chubb and Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard and Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet and Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. Like, we don't know what to do with these guys, so we're just gonna lump them all together and hope for the best.
And that's really it. I mean, just to list these guys: Tajay Spears, Woody Marks, Nick Chubb, Chuba Hubbard, R.J. Harvey, Kenneth Gainwell. And I think, and honestly, there's guys we didn't put on here, but like Kendra Miller, Tyler
Right.
Algier, Michael Carter, Hassan Haskins, Kareem Hunt. Like, there's a bunch of these guys that are in these split backfields where you kind of have to look at what is the game script going to be. Is the team going to be trailing? Well, they need to pass. Let's get the pass catching guy in. Are they going to be ahead? Do they have a positive game script? Let's keep the guy who can fall in the end zone. And that's more or less where you just start to lean when it comes down to like you're running back 37 in rankings here, right? Like that's where you have to go. You're leaning for upside. Dave, I don't know if there's anything remarkable to say here. I mean, Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, there's volatility in
That's
their usage.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's the
uh,
one that, like, I really wanna talk about because I don't have a strong read on this, like, it felt like the Woody Mark breakout was here 2 weeks ago, and then
Wrong.
yeah, well, it's a 3 yeah, whatever. The Woody Marks breakout felt like it was here, and then they went right back to Nick Chubb. I don't know what to make of this one too, because like, this is a game where I could see it going either way. Like, I could see either of these teams, the Seahawks or the Texans, running away with the game. I could also see it being a tough matchup. This is, we've got Houston has been trending up over the last couple of weeks. Nick Chubb still doesn't look great, but we saw almost no usage from Woody Marks last week. This one to me, like, I'm okay saying just bench both of these guys. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not clamoring to get
There's
Nick
no
Chubb or
logic
Woody
that
Marks.
wins here. There's no
Right.
logic that wins with either of these running backs because you can say Nick Chubb doesn't look good. You can kind of put this in whatever window you want to, and then all of a sudden Nick Chubb will still outtouch Woody Marks, and it just doesn't matter.
So like I'm at a point where like I am ranking both of these guys below where I should because I think there's just so much risk with both of them and I don't even think there's that much upside. So like if we're looking at a split backfield, this is just one that like I said, I'm just kind of okay avoiding both of these Houston running backs for now.
A couple other guys here in this tier, Chuba Hubbard. I think this is you approach with extreme caution. I like to ask the question is like, what can I live with? Whether it's putting the guy in the lineup or keeping him out. I can live with keeping him out of the lineup and he gets 10, 11, 12 points. I don't think we're getting a big blow up game from Chuba Hubbard. What I don't want to live with is putting him in the lineup and he gets me 2 points on 6 or 7 carries because he was on a pitch count coming back and Rico Dowdle is the new starter. And that's essentially where I'm at with Chuba. Are you kind of the same way, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I've got him or running back 41 in my rankings. And, I said at the top of the show when we were talking about Rico Dowdle, this could make me look like a fool after this weekend. But I just am ranking this as if, Rico Dowdle has run away with the job. And maybe this is me overcorrecting for like a lapse in judgment I had where I was like, Tyrone Tracy's coming back and he was the starter before he got hurt. And yeah, Cam Scadaboo's looked really good, but like Tyrone Tracy was the starter. They're going to give him his job back. And then that just didn't happen. And I think we're seeing something similar here where like Rico Dowdle has just been playing worlds better than anything we've seen from Chuba Hubbard this year. And I just don't know how you go back to it that way. Like this is the first time in Bryce Young or the second time in Bryce Young's career that they've won back-to-back games. And like we have heard Dave Canales so much talking about wanting to build this physical brand of football. Like they invested heavily in this interior offensive line. And Chuba Hubbard was just kind of going through the motions, not doing anything special. Rico Dowdle is coming out here looking like a special talent, and I think that he just retains the role.
Yeah, Rico Dowdle's been saying all the right things too. Is that like he understands that this was Chuba's team before his.
Mhm.
Chuba's got the big contract extension, so he's saying all the right things that might like give you a little bit of doubt. I still think it's a red herring. I think you got to live with Rico Dowdle being your starting running back now. Final two guys on this in this tier: R.J. Harvey and Kenneth Gainwell, who I think they are just a microcosm of each other. Guys who are going to have some role in the passing game. I think Kenneth Gainwell probably has a bigger role at this point, but you just don't expect the Steelers to be in a big passing type of environment. And I mean, honestly, same for the Broncos. They've just been a defense heavy team that's been trying to control the clock. And even when they are passing, it hasn't been overwhelmingly to RJ Harvey. So I don't really love either of these guys this week. They seem like more of nuisances than actual players I want to start in my lineup.
Yeah, I mean, like we thought we saw the RJ Harvey breakout when they just, you know, just beat the snot out of Cincinnati a few weeks ago, and we were like, well, genie's out of the bottle. RJ Harvey's going
That's
to
kind
keep
of like
doing
when
his
you see
thing.
DJ Giddens have a big role in week 1 for the
Right.
Colts against Miami.
That's exactly what it is. And like last
Yeah.
week in what was a close game, like RJ Harvey was just completely phased out. He had 2 rushing attempts and like, was able to get a handful of catches through the air. But this is one that um yeah, I mean Sean Payton backfields. And not even Sean Payton backfields, Payton receiver rooms too. Like we've
Sean
seen
Payton anything.
yeah.
Sean Payton offenses, Sean Payton teams.
seen 2 games now where it's just like Cortland Sutton, just like, why is he even on the field? Like, clearly their best player, and like he just gets phased out of random games. So I made the joke after like week 1 or 2 that I might just have like a do not draft any player on a Sean Payton team ever again rule. And I might actually live by that next year.
You know what? It's our fault. It's our fault for having fantasy teams. It's not Sean Payton's fault. It's our fault for thinking that he would do something different. All right, Dave, we went through our top, what was that, 39 running backs or 38 running backs? Yeah, 38 running
Who's
backs.
counting?
Yeah, me, apparently. But we're going to go into the wide receivers now, okay? We promised you guys 70 players. We're running through these pretty quick, but it's a heck of an
Which my
episode. We're going
quick
well.
math tells me that we're going to be way above 70 players.
Sure. Where are we at? Let me see. How many wide receivers?
39 plus 40?
38 and 40. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
78 doesn't sound good on a thumbnail. So 70 at least sounds cool. Listen, I couldn't get it clean. All right. Let's go into the first tier of wide receivers here. And top tier, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Drake London. I don't think there's anything to say. Like, they're all really good. You're starting every single one of them. They can
We
win
have,
you
like,
your
no
week.
dissension.
Good luck.
Like, we rank these guys almost exactly the same too. Like, these
Yeah.
are your elite wide receiver ones. Nothing to talk about here.
Yeah. So we're going to skip right down to tier 2. And this is where things get interesting. 2 players in a tie, Rome Odunze, Justin Jefferson. So you can rank them however you want. I doubt you're sitting here saying, well, which one do I start out of the 2 of them? Start them both. Figure
Yeah.
it out. Cut someone
Yeah.
else from the team. I don't care. But Rome Odunze needs to be in your lineups, even going against New Orleans this week. We kind of almost saw the touchdown I don't want to say touchdown variance here, but like we kind of saw it keep going until it got called back. Like the role just continues to grow for Rome Odunze. He is the clear wide receiver 1. We're also looking at potentially no DJ Moore in this game, depending on how he's trending throughout the week here, Dave. So Rome Odunze, I think not just a good start, but a potential week winner.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a good matchup for him, and it's funny. Like now we're not panic about Roma Dunze, but like coming out of the bye, he had his worst game of the season, and I have heard some like concern about Roma Dunze, but that penalty
Go buy.
was oh my
Go
gosh, that
buy.
penalty was so dumb, and like it
Yeah.
just robbed him of what would have been like a career highlight reel catch. Not happy about the way that transpired, but yeah, Roma Dunze, you're getting him in your lineup. He's the clear #1 option on this team.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson is the other guy here that we have in the exact same spot going up against Philly. It's Justin Jefferson. You're not benching him. Nico Collins, I think this is where people may start to ask questions, but for the most part, you're always starting Nico Collins. Going up against Seattle. Seattle has had major issues in their secondary because of injuries. We could be seeing the big blow up game for Nico Collins. I hope. Like that's why I have him ranked this high. Dave, I mean, you're confident firing up Nico Collins as a wide receiver 1 this week, right?
Yeah, and I've even got him ahead of Justin Jefferson. Like,
Okay.
we haven't really seen the huge blow up game yet, but still just like making special plays on a weekly basis. We talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about the running backs, but this Houston offense does seem like it's trending in the right direction here. And you talk about the injuries to Seattle's secondary. I mean, this just feels like a smash spot. And I will say, if Carson Wentz starts ahead of JJ McCarthy, then I'll make that flip and put Jefferson ahead of Nico Collins. But like,
It does
how is
look
that
like it's
actionable? Like,
trending that way,
yeah, and right,
but it doesn't
how does
matter. It doesn't
how does that
matter.
help the consumer anyway? Like, this is
No.
stuff we care about, like accuracy rankings for like in
Right.
season, but like you're starting Nico Collins, you're starting Justin Jefferson. Who cares?
Right. Right. Next on here, CD Lamb, and we had a specific conversation about how to play this with CD Lamb because obviously as the week goes on, you don't know for sure if players are going to play. You don't get that ruling until later in the week. So typically you kind of keep the rankings a little bit lower, but we said, hey, let's do this. Whereas if he is fully healthy, he is playing, where are you ranking him? And we've got him, Dave, as wide receiver 9 on the week. I've got him as a wide receiver 7. You've got him as wide receiver 11. So he fits right in the middle there. He's still a wide receiver 1. I think CeeDee Lamb, if he's healthy, he's going right back to the normal target share. I think a lot of this comes away from George Pickens. It comes away from Jake Ferguson. But teams have seen how important those guys can be to the offensive playbook. And I think that just continues to open things up for this Dallas offense. Going up against Washington, bottom 10 versus wide receivers. If CeeDee Lamb has the green light, you start him. I don't think you make any question about it or get worried about George Pickens.
So I will I think there's like a little bit of nuance to the CeeDee Lamb discussion, and I think it comes down to like how he's able to practice. If he gets a full practice under his belt, I'm much more confident starting him. But if it's like that, like he's limited every single day this week, and then comes down to like being a game time decision, I think that's where you might have to have some tough decisions about benching CeeDee Lamb, and only if your team is loaded. Like I'm not talking about benching CeeDee Lamb for Rashid Shaheed, but like there
Yeah,
are
I
some
was like,
guys
there's
right now.
very few situations where I'm benching C. Like they have to
Right.
come out and be like, he's not playing, or I don't know, man. Even if what if they say he's on a pitch count? Because we've seen this
Yeah,
before, and players still play well.
and that's what if they say he's on a pitch count, if they say like Jay Glazer, got to give it out to him. Fox Sports, like he always has these reads on Sunday morning, and like he is very, very accurate. He's not going to say something unless he's confident about it. So I'm going to be paying close attention to see if there's a Jay Glazer report because they do play a little bit later as well, which adds something into here. And again, like I'm not saying that like you need to bench CeeDee Lamb if he's limited or if they say he's a game time decision or anything like that. But if he's limited through the entire week, and if he gets that questionable tag going into Sunday morning, I'm probably going to rank George Pickens, Rashi Rice, Jalen Waddle, Brian Thomas Jr., Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Tedero McMillan. I'll have those guys ahead of CeeDee Lamb. So I'm
Um,
not saying he's like a wide receiver 3, but I'll have him kind of in that like middling wide
can I
receiver 2 tier.
can I just put the kibosh on all this here?
Yeah.
Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer on what he needs to see from CD Lamb this week in practice for him to play.
Mhm.
His answer: if he's breathing. So CD Lamb is playing.
Yes,
CD
and that's the other. It's a divisional game, like they always want to try to put these guys out. There's a lot of mind games that happen in these divisional games, but I'm still like, if he's limited throughout the
I'm not.
entire week, I think there's reason to have a little bit of pause.
I'm just gonna start him. I got no worries in the world. I'll go down with that ship 10 times out of 10. Next up on here, Rashee Rice coming back after suspension. So there's another player where it's been the combination of injury, suspension, all these things kind of coming together here. The assumption he's the Chiefs wide receiver one, returns to being the target leader, red zone magnet, yard after catch guy. We know that the Raiders secondary is terrible. I think this is an easy game for him to come back into where they can work him on some easy targets, get his feet under him so that he's ready for some of these tougher games. Um, Dave, you have Rashee Rice. Let me just double
Wide
check
receiver
that
10.
here. Wide receiver 10. I've got him at wide receiver 11. We're both starting him with absolutely no pause here. He's a wide receiver one.
And if CeeDee Lamb is active, then I'm making that switch where I'll put Rashi Rice ahead of George Pickens. But this is one too. Like the practice report came out, there were no limitations. Like he was a full participant through all of training camp. Wednesday, first practice of the week, he logged a full practice there as well. So there's no ramp up period or anything like that. Like he is going to hit the ground running. He is 100% healthy. You gotta like it wasn't a huge like it was a season ending injury, but they said it was a very clear timeline for his return. It was a clean injury. Like he was practicing in OTAs near
Right.
100%. So no concern about the injury here. Rashi Rice going right back into my lineup as a top 10 guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is a no-brainer for me, keeping Rashee Rice in the starting lineups. George Pickens, I think it becomes an interesting one. You've got Pickens ranked a bit higher than I do. You've got him as your wide receiver 9. I've got him at wide receiver 13. Like, it's not like I hate George Pickens. I just don't see him as the wide receiver 1 this week. And a lot of it too just has to do with the names that come right after him on the list, like Debo's and Ladd and AJ Brown. Like, I'm just kind of sticking with the Cowboys passing offense. So if you have worries, I think we can make this simple. If you have worries about what happens with George Pickens with CeeDee Lamb coming back, you keep him in your lineup. That's about it.
Right.
Like, I think at worst he's dropping from being a top 6 or 7 wide receiver to being a top 15 wide receiver. And so we're keeping him in our lineups no matter what.
Yeah, and same thing, like asterisk next to CeeDee Lamb, there's an asterisk next to George Pickens as well. Like when I sent these rankings over to you, I did have CeeDee Lamb down in like the 30s because I'm worried about whether he does play or whether he's limited. And I've got George Pickens right now as my wide receiver 9. But if CeeDee Lamb is active after a limited week of practice, I'm moving CeeDee Lamb up, moving George Pickens down a little bit. But I think they're still both wide receiver 2s with huge upside that you're putting in.
Oh my God, Dave. I have just come across a report from
Yes.
Tony Pauline here
Hmm.
that is floating around on Twitter, and I'm about to have a heart attack because report is that the Seahawks could move Tariq Woolen among other assets for Miami Dolphins running back Devon H.
Get out of here. No, he's trolling us. There is no way. This is like the
Oh my
one weakness in
gosh.
Seattle is their secondary. They are no,
J-
no, no, no. I'm not even breathing life into this.
Dude, JJ Zachariason said he'd quit fantasy football. Like I'd quit football.
I mean, you gotta
I'd
imagine
quit
though,
all
like
of it.
they say Tariq Woolen because he's the big name, but I'd imagine one of those running backs gets kicked back to Miami, right? Like Kenneth Walker last year of his deal, would they try to just like offload him and
Oh,
send
I'm
him down
buying
to
that jersey.
Miami?
I'm buying that jersey ASAP.
Kenneth Walker in
Okay.
Miami would be a lot of fun, and like that's the thing,
Okay.
like
Okay.
they're not going to throw those names in there, but my guess is that if they're getting Devon Achan, they're probably shipping either Walker or Charbonnet with Woolen.
I'm trying to find more on this, but wow, it just came out of nowhere, smacked me in the face in the middle of a podcast. Oh, that'd be a lot to process. Okay.
I
Well,
would say Kenneth Walker in Miami. Whoo,
oh, would be
that
so
would be
much.
fun.
You know what? You know what? I'm in. I'm in. If it's
I like
Tariq,
that
I
we're
mean,
just adding, like, adding to this report.
yeah.
Nothing says it, and we're just
If
like,
they
but what if
send
this?
Jackson Smith and the Jigba to Miami,
How would Tua look in a Seahawks jersey?
probably the same.
Oh man,
Probably the same. By the way, speaking of the Dolphins, final receiver in this tier is Jalen Waddle going up against the Cleveland Browns. Uh, we talked about Waddle yesterday in players to trade for, but he's been a wide receiver one with Tyreek Hill out of the lineup. I know that the Browns do tend to limit explosive plays, but the volume is there for Jalen Waddle, and so for me, he's still a top 12 guy. I've got him as my wide receiver 10 this week. Dave, I know you're just slightly lower, wide receiver 12, but we both see him wide receiver one. I think it's simple.
yeah, easy enough there.
Yeah, let's go to the next tier. Tier number 3, Brian Thomas Jr., Debo Samuel Sr. Oh, that's fun. You never get to say that back to back. Lad McConkey, Cortland Sutton, Teteroa McMillan, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, and Chris Olave. Dave, Brian Thomas Jr. does feel like he has totally taken over the wide receiver one role in this Jaguars offense. I know that there's been a quote from Liam Cohen where he said like, "Oh, we're going to be using Travis Hunter a bit more as the first option in the offense."
So they did last week.
Yeah,
Season high route participation. And this is we talked about this so much in the preseason. Like, why don't you just turn these two guys into Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? Like the
I don't get
skill
it.
sets are so similar. And like
Yeah.
I've said the square peg round hole thing so many times with Liam Cohen, but like stop trying to turn Brian Thomas Jr. into a slot receiver working across the middle of the field. That's not what he does. Like,
Just let
let
him
this
be
guy
Mike
play.
Evans. Let Travis Hunter be Chris Godwin.
Yes.
Let Travis Etienne be Buccaneer. Like, just do it. Just give us the Buccaneers in a different city in Florida. That's all we want.
And I mean,
Sorry.
like, it makes too much sense to me because, like, every time you see Brian Thomas Jr. doing what he does best, he looks like an amazing receiver. Like when he's just
Right.
like running the rail, making these contested catches deep downfield, getting behind defenses. Let him do that. Like he had 3 in breaking routes last week. 2 of them were dropped, and one of them was like a 4-yard gain. Like that's just not what he does. He is not a guy who catches in breaking routes through traffic. That is
At
exactly
least not
what
well.
Travis Hunter does. So just like put these guys in roles to succeed. I have faith in Liam Cohen getting there eventually, but yeah, I like seeing that Brian Thomas Jr. like every single week, it just seems like he drifts further and further outside, and it just makes me a little bit happier seeing him where he should be.
Next on here, Debo Samuel at wide receiver 13 going up against Dallas. This is another one where I think we see a shootout. It's an easy secondary for him to win. Still no Terry McLaurin. There was a moment last week where I was like, oh my God, are we going to have to talk about Chris Moore being a thing on Washington? Like where he was just getting peppered with targets and gets a
Uh,
touchdown in the first half and then it just kind of all went away. So I was like, okay, never mind. We don't have to deal with that. But so Debo Samuel, I still think remains the lead wide receiver over there in Washington for now.
Slight pause on Debo, just like paying attention to the injury report because we saw
Right.
coming into
That's the
last
only
week's
thing.
game, he had the heel injury and clearly was not himself in that game. And
Yes.
heel injury is still lingering. And we've played fantasy football long enough and we've watched Debo Samuel on injury reports long enough. When he's healthy, he's one of the best receivers in football. When he's dealing with an ailment, we kind of look at him as more of like a boom bust wide receiver, too.
Do you remember what the rule is from Adam Hutchison? Like there was a rule of like
I
how
know.
many practices that Debo had to get?
I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember asking him to pull those numbers a while back, and he said it was like one of the most shocking, like that when Debo Samuel isn't on the injury report, and then it's something like
Like
a
if he
50%
logs
fall
like
off in
if
production
he
if
logs
he's
like at least one full practice, I
that's
think
what it
he's
is. Yeah,
good. But if it's like multiple limited practices, it's basically you can't start him. So
exactly. Yeah, so
that'll be
paying
the thing
close
to pay
attention.
attention
Right.
to. Next on here, Lad McConkey going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Looking like we won't have Quentin Johnson for this game, but keep an eye on that as well. McConkey, I mean, he looked great last week, made a big play towards the end of the game. Just it kind of just seemed like the lad of old, which is just fun to say out loud into a microphone. But yeah, I mean, 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown last week. I mean, just everything seems to be good. Uh, Colts are actually not great against receivers. They've been able to
Mhm.
stop teams running backs, but I mean their best corner is Avian Howard, retired after like a couple games, or at least he was their lead corner. I don't know about being best,
After
but
JSN just beat him down so badly that he's
yeah,
like,
he was
"No,
like,
this
I
is
can't.
this is a young
I'm
man's
tired,
game, and I
boss.
can't do it anymore."
Yeah, yeah, he was done. He was out. Lad McConkey is still. I mean, he should be. Dave, we've got him at wide receiver 15 in the rankings, so I think he's an easy plug and play wide receiver 2 this week.
Mhm.
I don't feel like there's a whole lot of like if then analysis that you've got here for Lad McConkey, Cortland Sutton here on another one. Like Cortland Sutton, I think is just kind of you're hoping for the touchdown bounce back and some safe volume, but that's not a game that I really want to target.
He also
Tedero
got the
McMillan,
sauce treatment last year or
right?
last week, so, yeah, we look at the down week, like, Sauce
When you
Gardner.
say that, you mean he was shadowed by Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, the sauce
Okay, I just
treatment
wanted to
does
elaborate.
sound
Yeah,
a little weird, yeah,
doesn't yeah, you're having a weird day. You're having a weird day on the pod for those who listen to the cold open on the audio side.
yeah.
Um, Tedero McMillan is the other guy to talk about here. And this could be interesting because with Jalen Coker coming back, we saw a little dip in targets last week, but we saw the touchdowns come in. And so it's
Now he's
interesting.
getting
You
sauced.
mentioned yeah, I didn't want to say it, but we mentioned the sauce treatment, and he's got Sauce Gardner this week going up against the Jets. I think there's enough reason to worry. Where I think you'll start. I think I would start a Lad McConkey over Tedero McMillan this week. Um, I think if I'm looking correctly, I'm starting AJ Brown over Ted McMillan this week, and I'm starting Chris Olave over Tedero McMillan this week.
I don't think I'm there with Chris Olave. I do understand it. You know, the sauce treatment is always a little bit scary, but we also talked a lot earlier in the week about how Jalen Coker can kind of open this entire offense up. And with him back at practice, I think having a secondary target to pull some of the gravity away from Tedero McMillan will benefit him. So maybe I'm too aggressive on Tedero McMillan. I feel like one of the blind spots in my analysis this year has not been reacting to matchups quite as much as I should. Just kind of like a trust the talent thing. And over a
Mhm.
large sample size, that typically tends to work out. But this is kind of one of those games that could be a little bit disappointing for Tetaroa. I'm sorry.
Tetaroa, yeah, if he's watching, he's gonna thumbs down. AJ Brown going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Like you said, the role has been growing week after week. Vikings are a pretty stingy defense, but still kind of beatable. I think that AJ Brown's just an easy plug and play wide receiver 2 here, Dave. I hate this section of the tiers here because it's just kind of boring. Like these are the guys like play them. I wish there was more analysis to get here, but there's not. A lot of them are in very meh matchups. They have had meh production, but you're going to start these guys because they're your wide receiver 2s.
Yeah, and I think DK Metcalf is the guy who probably deserves to be a little bit higher in this tier, just because like over the last couple of weeks, it does seem like he has broken out. Like
It's
the
the touchdown streak. It's now he's got the easy matchup against Cincy. Yeah,
also just the change in usage. I mean, we saw him. He pulled 69% of his team's air yards in
nice.
week 6. Yep, very nice. Also, the highest team air yards percentage of any wide receiver in week 6, and we're also just seeing like the usage has changed a little bit. Like early in the season, it was just like these short little dump offs. Like he didn't catch a single pass more than 5 yards downfield. Last week, we saw that he hasn't had a single game this year with an A dot above 10 yards average depth of target. Last week, his A dot was 17.1 yards downfield. So like please give us more of this. Like DK Metcalf is not Wandale Robinson. Like let this guy get downfield and make plays, and it seems like we're starting to see that now.
And Arthur Smith stared into the camera and said, "No, no, I don't think I will."
Get ready to learn Connor Hayward, buddy.
That's right. you think maybe I think maybe the Steelers will trade for Darren Waller. Maybe they'll keep
Hmm.
just grabbing more tight ends. Grab an AJ Barner from Seattle. Just keep
They
adding
said they
more.
wanted a wide receiver, and I do wonder, like with CeeDee Lamb healthy now, George Pickens, like potential target for the Steelers, maybe.
Shut
No.
up. DJ Moore, though, that would be fun.
DJ Moore would make sense. He does a lot of the off script stuff that um, Aaron Rodgers gets a little bit upset about. I don't know if that would be the best fit, but I said the same thing about DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers. I said that they were oil and vinegar early in this, or oil and water early in the season, and it
I was like,
seems like
oil and
they're
vinegar is
starting to.
delicious.
I should bet, yeah.
All
Maybe that's what it
right.
is. Maybe DK is more vinegar now than he was water earlier.
Last guy on the tier here, Chris Olave, who I'm just gonna keep the candle lit for him, man. 10 plus targets in 5 of his last 6 games. It's a soft matchup going up against Chicago. Dave, I don't know about you, man, but like I remain shocked that Tyreek Stevenson is still a starting cornerback in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, Chris Olave here, I think this game might be closer than we expect, or at least it's going to force the Saints to pass the ball quite a bit more, like what you were talking about with Dalvin Kamara.
Yeah, and right now, like the secondary is super banged up, especially like Jalen Johnson still isn't going to be back. So, yeah, I mean and I forget. I think we talked about this yesterday or 2 days ago. Like this Bears defense isn't really built on like stopping teams. It's like built on trying to just beat them down. Like they blitz so heavily, and like they are throwing these really like complex looks at quarterbacks. But because they do that, it allows for a lot of big plays. So like they're going to give up those big plays, but they're also going to generate a lot of turnovers. This is not like the Tampa 3 bend don't break type of offense. Like they are going to break often, but they're also going to break offenses that they're playing against often. So this could be a sneaky big spot for Chris Olave. It's touchdowns have really been his kryptonite so far this year. I could see him getting in the end zone in this game.
Let's go to tier number 4, where we start with wide receiver 21. It's Keenan Allen. We'll go all the way down to wide receiver 30. So Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Xavier Worthy, Jamison Williams, Devontae Smith, Jordan Addison, Romeo Doubs, Wandale Robinson, Matthew Golden, T. Higgins. Now, the Romeo Doubs one surprised me, Dave. You're much higher on Doubs than I am. We'll get to that one in a minute. Keenan Allen, you and I think both remain just very confident in him because this is a matchup where wide receivers can win. If there is no Quentin Johnston, you're still going to see volume for Keenan Allen. So I'm not worried about it. You and I both have him around the same ranking.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm firing Keenan Allen up. This is one where, again, like I went back to the tape because you see like the raw numbers. It's like 60 yards and a touchdown in each of his first 3 games, no touchdowns, and less than 60 yards in each of his last 3 games. But he had like a really tough drop last week, which is pretty uncharacteristic for Keenan Allen. He also had one play where he was wide open in the end zone and Justin Herbert just didn't see him. So like had he been hit on that touchdown or caught that drop, like we'd be having very different conversations about Keenan Allen because he would have rebounded to 80 yards at a touchdown last week. So still looks like the player that he looked like early in the season. Just touchdown variance hasn't been breaking in his direction. So still firing him up as a wide receiver too, but some of that early season shine has started to wear off a bit.
The next two guys on here, Stephon Diggs and Xavier Worthy. I would say Stephon Diggs worries me a little bit because I think the Patriots could get ahead and not need to pass the ball all that much. And the other thing is that when teams do pass against the Titans, they get a lot of big plays. The Titans do tend to allow more deep completions than any other team, which this could be another Kayshon Boutte blow up game
Yeah.
because we haven't really seen that as much with Stephon Diggs. So I think he's a fine start if you need to put him in as like a wide receiver 3 or a flex play, but I don't know. I necessarily believe that I see the upside there. Xavier Worthy worries me as well. Where sure, I think there's more upside. Like I would put Xavier Worthy over Stephon Diggs, but I'm very worried about what happens with Rashee Rice back in that offense. Jamison Williams though is the next guy on there, and I think that's the guy that I would want to have, and I do have over both of them in my rankings. We saw the role grow a little bit. Indoor matchup in Detroit, Tampa Bay potential shootout, secondary very beatable. Jamison Williams kind of excites me this week as a high upside wide receiver too.
Yeah, I'm ranking him a little bit higher this week than I have in previous weeks. But, like, overall, it just hasn't been good. I recorded with
No,
our friend Chris Harris this morning over on Harris Football, and we talked about Jamison Williams and just, like, you don't have to look at, like, the in-depth analytics. Like, last year, he was averaging 6.1 targets per game. This year, he's averaging 4.7. Last year, he was averaging 66 yards per game. This year, he's averaging 46. Last year, he was scoring touchdowns at a higher rate. Like he was the per game wide receiver 19 last year. He's the per game wide receiver 42 this year. So clearly something is a little bit off. And when you watch the games, it feels like he's always like a very intentional part of the early part of the games. Those like first 15 to 20 plays that they say are scripted in the film
It's almost
room.
like they want to scare the defense and like keep them honest and be like, "Hey, we can do this, right?" And then they
Right.
just totally switch away from it and they go, "Okay, we got to get Jameer Gibbs going. Let's get Sam Laporta going." And like it almost feels like they're trying to get everyone going at different times and see who gets hot and what works.
Yeah, and I think like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameer Gibbs, those are the guys that you're firing up without question on a weekly basis. But then when it comes to Jameson Williams and Sam Laporta and David Montgomery, we know one or two of these guys are going to go off in any given week, but there just isn't enough for all of them to do that. So we're just going to have these frustrating games with Jameson Williams. Like you just got to keep him in your lineup. And I do like, this is a good matchup against a banged up Tampa Bay secondary with a very high over under on the week. So everything is saying put Jameson Williams in your lineup, but I also understand people that are just looking at the raw numbers saying like Jameson Williams hasn't taken that step forward that he hoped for. He's actually taken a step backward. So I understand why some people might want to bench him, but you and I are both pretty ahead of consensus this week because of the matchup.
Let's talk about a group of wide receivers here in this tier. Devontae Smith, Jordan Addison. Neither of them really excite me. You're just kind of hoping they get a touchdown here. Like that's what it is for Jordan Addison. It's kind of always been that. It's a big boomer bust performance every single week. Eagle secondary looking a little thin right now, so there is potential for that with Jordan Addison. Whereas for Devontae Smith, like I'm not really excited at all. Like the usage has been steady, it just hasn't been good. And he's got a tough matchup this week against the Vikings. I know we're seeing more passing volume from the Eagles, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a whole lot of passing points. A lot of it has been AJ Brown, Dallas Goddard, and it just hasn't looked good. Like Jalen Hurts has not looked good, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and that's anytime you get into the is Jalen Hurts good discourse, there's going to be a lot of people with strong opinions on that. But yeah, he's been missing a lot of like easy throws, and I think that's why
Mhm.
Dallas Goddard is doing so well because like the deep ball has just been so off for Jalen Hurts this year. He can hit Dallas Goddard 5 yards downfield across the seam. He can't really hit those deep shots. I mean, we saw it like we'd be having a very different question or conversation about Devonta Smith if he connected. Like there was an 85-yard gimme touchdown a couple weeks ago that Jalen Hurts just sailed like 15 yards in front of him. So like it's Devonta Smith, and this is a matchup that we are expecting the Eagles to want to have to throw the ball against this blitz heavy Miami offense. But the problem is, I think because they blitz so heavily and they generate pressure so well, we're going to see a lot of those targets going to Dallas Goddard again, just like we've seen. We're going to see a lot of going to Saquon Barkley in the flat. Devonta Smith isn't going to get to run his long developing routes downfield, getting targets, because I think they're just going to be able to consistently put pressure on this on Jalen Hurts. So definitely tempering expectations for Devonta Smith this week. If you want to bench him, I've got him ahead of Wandale Robinson and Matthew Golden and DJ Moore, but like they're close enough that if you want to bench Devonta Smith for one of those guys, I want to blame anybody for it.
There's a player I just realized that we didn't talk about, and that's because the news has kind of been breaking as we've been prepping for the show about Mike Evans, who
Yeah.
is reportedly practicing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Um, if he's playing, Dave, I think he's a go. Like I think he is a wide receiver too that you are plugging in. There's no Emeka Ibuka. There's no Chris Godwin. If we were going out on the waiver wire and getting excited about Tez Johnson and Sterling Shepard and all these other guys, you've got Mike Evans going up against the banged up Detroit secondary indoor matchup, potential shootout here with these teams. I would have him probably, if I'm looking at my rankings right now, probably around that wide receiver 25 range, the same spot that I have guys like T. Higgins and Jameson Williams, Keenan Allen in there.
And that's I've got him at wide receiver 29. And this is another one like what if they said he was practicing in full, he'd probably be inside my top 15. But I think
Yeah,
there's a huge risk in this game that Mike
absolutely.
Evans goes out not 100% and is just kind of a decoy. We talked about it earlier in the week, but I see this Tampa Bay Detroit game. It's not crazy to think that the winner of this matchup gets the 1 seed in the NFC. Like this is two of the best teams in the NFC going up against each other. And I think that even if Mike Evans isn't 100%, like they might still put him out there just to kind of get any edge that they can. So this is one where if he logs a full practice on Friday, I'm starting him as a high end wide receiver too. If he's limited all week, I'm looking at him as more of like a risky wide receiver 3.
Well, that's why typically, like if he was healthy, I'd be putting him, where I've got AJ Brown, Chris Olave, and Ted McMillan
Yep.
up around
Yep.
like wide receiver 17. With
Right.
him not being or potentially not being healthy, like we don't know what we're gonna get. I keep him just outside of that wide receiver 2 tier, where say, he's in the same thing as the boom bust guys like the Jordan Addisons, the Devontae Smiths, and a couple of these other guys that we should talk about here. The Packers wide receivers, Romeo Dobbs and Matthew Golden. I've got Golden ahead of Dobbs. You've got Dobbs ahead of Golden. So let's speak on it. Well, why do you have Dobbs a little bit higher in your rankings?
Just he's a full-time player in this offense, and he has been a lot better than I
Is
think
it the Guardian
people
cap?
expect. It is the Guardian cap, big fan of him out there, like making himself a very easy to
Looking
spot
like an
target.
NBA Jam player.
Right. But, like, he has quietly been a lot better this year than I think people realize. Like, it was
Yeah.
always that, like, "Oh, Romeo Dobbs, he's on the field," and that's kind of it. But this year, he's 36th in target share. Like, he's pulling targets at a higher rate than he ever has throughout his career. I was just looking at this the other day, like, the ability to pull targets. And when we're looking at Romeo Dobbs, he has a higher target share than Lad McConkey. He's got a higher target share than
Yeah.
Ricky Pearsall and Chris Godwin in the games that he's played. Like, he's in the same area as Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Cooper Kupp, George Pickens. Like, it is kind of crazy how Dobbs has really stepped up here. And I think that his whole career is kind of a story of like putting in the dirty work and doing the hard work and then watching that role grow. Like when he came into the league, it was like, wow, this guy is a pretty good blocker for a wide receiver. And then it's like, okay, this guy has a good feel for where the first down marker is and he can move the chains. And then like, oh, this guy can also catch touchdowns. And now he's like slowly developing into the team's leading receiver. So I'm not going to fault you for putting Matthew Golden ahead of Romeo Dubs because the ceiling is so high. Like, he can break off those big plays that Dubs can't. But right now, Dubs is operating as the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense.
And I think that's it. That's the tiebreaker for me is when I get to the
Right.
wide receiver 3 range, I'm just looking for the guy with the upside. And it seems like as the season has gone on, the team has been trying to figure out like how do we turn Matthew Golden into Jaden Reed and have him
Mhm.
do a lot of the same slot stuff and get a lot of these touches behind the line of scrimmage and get him some carries. They've done a lot of Jaden Reed-esque things with Matthew Golden
Yeah.
while they're just kind of letting Romeo Dobbs be Romeo Dobbs. Now, we'll see how that goes as the season goes on. They bring in Christian Watson back and what that ends up becoming. Um, but the role's growing for Matthew Golden, and that's just why I lean towards that upside. If the role grows, you've got the upside, you've got the explosive plays, and then all these unique ways of getting touches. I'm
Mhm.
very intrigued by that, and then that's where I'll lean. Um, Other guy, last guy to talk about in this tier is T. Higgins, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's been a weird season for the Bengals. I'm a bit higher on T, like a lot higher actually. So let's talk about that because I've got him at wide receiver 24. You've got T Higgins as your wide receiver 37 this week. Um, Listen, Pittsburgh secondary for me is very very beatable. Um, I know this could be one of those slog fests here, but Joe Flacco's getting the ball out quick. Didn't really seem like he was doing a whole lot to try to target running backs last week. It seems like it is Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and that's about it, especially with no Mike Gesicki. I'm still going to lean towards T. Higgins here. So, what has you worried about putting T. Higgins in your lineup? Is it just the Flacco of it all? Is it the Bengals of it all?
Yeah, I mean, that's really all it is. Like, this is I don't know if people realize how bad T. Higgins has been this year. I mean, like, he's pacing for 600 yards. Like, this guy is
Yeah.
hardly playing as a wide receiver 5 right now, and I'll admit, like, there were signs of life last week. 8 targets, we like to see that, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was
best
the wide
game
receiver
of
28 last week, and then even the week before that with Jake Browning, wide receiver 35. Like that's not exciting, but it's a wide receiver 3, right? So like if I want to lean towards what could happen, that's why I kind of have him on that cusp.
yeah, and even that, you say, like, the 2 weeks ago with Jake Browning, 22 yards. Like, he was able to get
No,
into the touchdown, which
I
saved
get it.
his but, like, yeah, it's just
But that's always the thing with T, right? Is like he can get the touchdown even on 2 catches.
Yeah, and I think, I maybe over shifted how I'm looking at
I
the
might be too
Cincinnati
high on him.
Bengals. Yeah, and I might be too low on him, and that's why we do this show where we can kinda talk about our aggregate. Like, the reality is, like, you might be too high on him, I might be too low on him, and this average ranking that we have him is probably exactly where he does belong, but I'm just so terrified of this Bengals offense, and, like, we know Joe Flacco, he understands his role in this offense. He's gonna throw the ball to Jamar Chase 12 to 15 times every single week. And if there's scraps left over for T. Higgins, T. Higgins can kind of squeak in as a wide receiver two here and there. But this is one where like the upside just isn't there. And like that's why we love T. Higgins, because Joe Burrow was throwing the ball all over and he was so efficient. And we'd still see T. Higgins with like 100 yards and a touchdown. Well, Jamar Chase was going for 150 and two. And those days, that's just not happening this year. Like I think T. Higgins is very much so at this point, even with Joe Flacco, just kind of like a touchdown dependent wide receiver three.
See, I put it the other way. Like I do see him as having the upside. I see him as having though a pretty bad floor. Like if those targets are not hitting, right?
Mhm.
But the upside for me is definitely still there because of Flacco's tendency to want to throw deep. He hasn't been doing it as much lately this year. Like he's been getting the ball out quick. We'll see how this ends up going against Pittsburgh. It's a Thursday night game. Let's go to the final tier here, where it's going to be wide receivers 31 through 40. And we've got Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, Rashid Shaheed, Cooper Kupp, Travis Hunter, Jordan Whittington, Jerry Jeudy, Troy Franklin, and Tez Johnson. And I think the Tez Johnson thing kind of works itself out. If Mike Evans is in, Tez Johnson goes back down. Like this is where we have Tez on a best case scenario, right? It's like being a wide receiver four or whatever we want to put him as. I don't think we need to talk about all of these players, Dave, in this tier. I think there are a few guys that stand out, and we can talk about the Vegas receivers together.
And that's what Trey Tucker is the one that surprises me. Like I thought I was being like irresponsibly high on Trey Tucker, and then I saw your rankings come through. You were even higher than I was, and like I,
Yeah.
I I went back and I've watched all of his film from this entire season, because like I totally looked at that huge 145-yard 3 touchdown game, and I was like, that's a fluke. Like that is
Right.
not going to happen again. Completely wrote it off, and I was so smug about him having 2 catches for 13 yards the very next week, because I was like, yeah, that's what Trey Tucker does, but he is quietly starting to take over as the wide receiver one here. And like, I love Jacoby Myers. I know you love Jacoby Myers as well, but something weird is happening here. And like, Trey Tucker isn't that guy who's just playing on the boundary anymore. He is starting to play all over the formation. He's starting to run in breaking routes. He's getting screens. They're allowing him to create after the catch. And I think the reason I'm taking the cheese on Trey Tucker is because what we're seeing now, like being that field stretching burner for the first couple of years of his career and then developing into a more well rounded player. Immediately think of two other guys that played under Pete Carroll that did the same thing. Doug Baldwin, early in his career, was just stretching the field and then started working all over. Tyler Lockett, early in his career, was just a downfield burner and then became that guy winning all over the field. And we're seeing a very similar career path for Trey Tucker now. So I don't want to ignore what we've seen over these last few weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, Geno Smith has been a guy that likes to throw the ball deep. So when you've got a guy that he knows can win, like you want to go and try to get those chunk plays, especially when you're not a good offense. But the big thing for me is I kind of have Jacoby Myers where he's at as a placeholder because he has not
Mhm.
practiced this week. And
Yep.
there's all the trade rumors right now. There's all the fun reports that he's unfollowed the Raiders on Instagram. He started following the Patriots on Instagram. And so there's also the reports that the Patriots are looking at adding a wide receiver. So who knows? Maybe we get Jacoby Myers back in New England. That would
Jacoby
be
Myers is the one that makes sense to Pittsburgh. We talk about like them looking like I think,
yeah,
is the perfect complement to DK Metcalf,
yeah.
just super crisp route runner who can work
He's
across the
Timu
middle of the
Devontae
field.
Adams. Like I'm with it.
100%. Just such a good fit for Aaron Rodgers and such a complementary piece to DK Metcalf. That's the one that would make the most sense to me.
And Jacoby, if you're listening, I didn't mean that as a slight to you. Devontae Adams is just really good. Um, Kendrick Bourne is on this list as well, going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Um, Atlanta's defense has been quite good, and they've been really good at not allowing a whole lot of passing yards. We don't quite know what's going to happen with San Francisco. We have the reports that George Kittle's practicing, but we don't know if he's going to be active for sure. We've had reports that Brock Purdy is practicing. We don't know if he's going to be active for sure. Juwan
I saw
Jennings has his
they said Brock Purdy was more limited than Mac Jones. I pay
cool.
so much attention to injury reports. I have never heard a coach say that. Like, it is just you're either, like, not
More limited
practicing,
or
limited, or full practice. To hear more limited, like, I've never heard that before, and it made me laugh yesterday.
he was just had a VR headset. He was inside, seated, did not move. That's
And that's, like,
basically
when
it.
you see a limited participation, that's why, like, it's so hard to draw conclusions, because a limited participation in practice could be you're doing 5% of the work, or you could be doing 95% of the work. And it is just such a broad spectrum of what an LP means on an injury report.
I think Kendrick Bourne right here, he kind of leans in perfectly to A couple of these other guys that we have in the exact same spots, Kendrick Bourne, Rashid Shaheed, Travis Hunter, Jordan Whittington, are kind of all these guys where they could be absolutely nothing this week or they could absolutely blow up. And that's kind of what we've seen from them throughout their career, at least with Shaheed and Bourne. Hunter, I think we're all just kind of waiting to see it happen. And I don't know that
Yeah.
anyone's going to be starting him in each week. Whittington, however, I do. You're
I'm
starting him this
desperate
week?
enough in a handful of leagues that I
There
don't
you
have
go.
a choice, and that's the thing, like, you get to the point in deep leagues, injuries are here, bye weeks are here. I don't feel good about it, but I've got Travis Hunter in a few lineups this week.
Interestingly enough, Jordan Whittington, I think, becomes the easy desperation start for a lot of people that need a wide receiver three or need a flex play going up against Jacksonville. It's a bad secondary. Obviously, no Puka Nakua. It's London game. Don't know what bearing that has on fantasy football, but I said that into the microphone just now. Jordan Whittington's had a good role when he's had the opportunity to go in and play for someone when they get injured. He's been a wide receiver 3 or 4 for fantasy, and I think that's
Yeah.
kind of what we can expect here.
Yeah, I mean, former running back. That's what he played in high school. Was a very good running back in high school. Actually holds the all-time state record in Texas for most rushing yards in a high school championship game. Fun little tidbit there. Got went to Texas, still played running back there, and made this transition midway through his college career. And when you watch him, like he's listed as a wide receiver, but like it's jet sweeps, it's end arounds, it's screens. Like he's not going to be doing the Puka Nakua stuff, lining up out wide and beating a guy 30 yards downfield, but he can do a lot of like the early career Puka stuff that we saw. So relatively high floor for a guy who's still available in like 70% of fantasy leagues right now. If you're one of those guys dealing with the injuries, you can pick him up for nothing right now and play him as a high floor flex option.
Last guy that we're going to talk about here. He's not the last in the rankings, but honestly, might as well be. Jerry Jeudy. Is he deceased for fantasy football purposes?
I mean, this whole offense in Cleveland since Dylan
13
Gabriel has been,
targets and you can't do anything with it.
yeah, and that's it. Like it's the Harold Fannin show there, and I didn't think we'd be saying that, but like Harold Fannin is the number one weapon here. Dylan Gabriel loves him, and Bond and Judy and other guys are going to get targets, but like it feels like the only targets that Dylan Gabriel can hit are the short tight end, not short like they're tall, but the short targets going to these big bodied tight ends. And yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in Jerry Judy right now. All these guys that we have kind of talked about, Tez Johnson, Jordan Whittington, Kendrick Bourne, if we're not looking at Juwan Jennings out there, I prefer all of them to Jerry Judy at this point.
I'm double checking because I really need to see this. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that Jerry Jeudy, yep, this is a homecoming game for Jerry Jeudy. And we know how
Mhm.
petty he gets. He's from Deerfield Beach,
Good point.
Florida. This
Good
is
point.
that Deerfield Beach, Florida is about 25, 30 minutes from the stadium. It could be one of those things where family's going to be there. Jerry's back down in Miami,
All right.
going up against the battered Dolphins defense. I
All
don't
right.
know how this helps you for fantasy because I'm not saying to go start him. I'm just saying it could potentially happen because of who Jerry Jeudy is.
I mean, I will say, like, there are guys that we didn't even talk about on today's show that I have ranked ahead of Jerry Judy this week. Like, if you can get
I
Jalen Coker off waivers, I'd play
Yeah,
him over Jerry Judy.
yep. Yep. Like I think it's really fun to start Kayshawn Booty this week, Luther Burden this week. Like you said, Jalen Coker as well. Like I will start all of those guys over Jerry Jeudy because the mystery box upside is just there for them, honestly.
Exactly, right. And Jerry Judy, he just it takes him like 8 seconds to get open. Like he's not one of those guys that just like immediately gets open. Like you see all of these plays where like Jerry Judy is like running like
Feels like
60
he's
yards
watching his own
downfield.
highlight reels in his head as
Right.
he's like, man, this is gonna look so good on Monday in film study, and
And
like
and
it
I'll,
just never matters.
and I'll see people on Twitter like, look at Jerry Judy. He was wide open. And like by the time Jerry Judy's 60 yards downfield with his hand in the air, Dylan Gabriel's got like 4 defenders in his face and he's fighting for his life, like trying to get the ball off. Like that isn't helpful. Like taking 8 seconds to get open 60 yards downfield helps absolutely nobody. So yeah, I'm kind of out on Jerry Judy unless we see a big change from Dylan Gabriel.
Well, you know what, Dave? We did it. We always under promise, over deliver. We said 70 players. You thoughtfully pointed out this was more like 78 players. No, we
And
talked
then we
about more
snuck
that
in
weren't on the
Jalen
list.
Coker. Yeah.
So you know what? welcome to the top 80 running back and wide receiver rankings. If you stuck around for the whole show, you got that in this heckin' chonker of an episode here, man. But we're going to be doing these every Thursday, week 7. Good luck to everybody. We're going to be back again on Monday with our week 7 recap. And then we've got the waiver wire, the trade show, and then our tier rankings every single week. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time.